Hello, welcome to the reading room. Today I'm going to talk about some of the books I read in May. And I have two different videos of my May reading wrap up. May was Mental Health Awareness Month, so I did have, well, it started with two reads for that, and then it kind of grew into a few more reads and then another read. So I decided to do a separate video just on my reads for Mental Health Awareness Month. So I will have the link for that in the comments if you want to check that out. So on top of those, these are the books that I read for May. Starting with, I believe this was the first book I read in May. One night during dinner, there was no basketball on. I didn't feel like playing video games. I don't even remember what my mindset was, but I just felt like watching a James Bond movie. So I watched Dr. No, and it had made me think, because I have all the Ian Fleming novels, but I haven't read them since my early 20s. So I figured I would grab Dr. No and give it a read, and I did. This actually was the sixth book published in his James Bond series. I forgot how different the book was from the movie, and like surprisingly that I forgot how different it was. This is the sixth book, and I did decide that, having forgotten how different they were, I was going to go back and read the Ian Fleming canon of James Bond novels, but read them in publication order. And I might do a video just because I'm a big James Bond fan. But I might do a video about some of the differences and my overall thoughts on these. I don't see a lot of Ian Fleming Dr. No book reviews, and again, I mean, they're books that were written late 50s, 60s, so that probably would be the reason. So in this book, Dr. No himself is the villain of the book, like he is in the movie. But Dr. No owns an island that people won't go to, people disappear, and James Bond ends up there after a few deaths of some of the MI6 personnel. Good book. I enjoyed it. Like I said, one of the things that struck me was all the differences in the novel. In the movie itself, it did focus on these rare radio transmissions that were toppling missiles or satellites or something like that. And that doesn't really come into play until really toward the end of the book. And that's brought into play by exposition by Dr. No himself. And the whole island operates off bat guano is what generates the money for Dr. No, which bat guano did not make the movie. So it's what I thought it was pretty funny. So good read, good quick read. I do have all these versions of the James Bond books. The second book I read for May is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. Reason I read this book is back in March, I read a book called The Last Murder at the End of the World, which was by Stuart Turton, and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was such a fun read. It's a murder mystery. At the end of the world, it's about this island where the last remnants of humanity live, and a scientist is murdered. And it's got elements of post-apocalyptic, dystopia, utopia, murder mystery, sci-fi, and he doesn't leave. What was fun about it, which made it a fun read, was he doesn't lean heavily into these elements. They're there, acknowledges them, they're weaved into the story, but not to the point where it's so serious where it overtakes the story itself. I hope that makes sense. It didn't detract from the fun of the story. It's not going to be a book for everyone, but it was probably one of my 5-star reads that I had back in March. So I decided, because it was on sale, to pick up his first book. This is described as a Groundhog Day's murder mystery. The main character, Aiden, wakes up in the woods, not just like, wait, what's going on? And what happens over the course of 8 days is he has to solve the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle. But how he does so is he spends 24 hours in the body of a different person who is somehow tied to the murder, has clues to the murder. And what each person brings to the table, each character that he inhabits has some kind of limitations. So he has to learn which ones to lean on to solve this mystery. Like, one of the gentlemen is extremely obese and he can't get around, say, maybe to go talk to other people. He has to send messages, but the mind's really sharp. Another one of the characters is just loathed. Does not have a good history with women. So he's bouncing, for the most part, there are some bouncing back and forth because he has to spend a certain number of hours in these bodies. So say one of them gets knocked unconscious, then he's transported to either the next body or another body. It was a good book. I enjoyed it. It required quite a bit. There had to be a character that explained what was going on. I was kind of hoping it was structured in a way that he's going through these bodies to solve this murder and then figuring it out along the way. But that's not the case. There's a few characters that are there to kind of, as the story progresses, here's the ground rules. Here's something you need to consider. It's kind of not necessarily holding his hand, but there are characters there to let the reader know what the rules are of him solving this murder, because it does take place on the same day, but it's through the viewpoint or the point of view of 8 different characters. Very creative, just like The Last Murder at the End of the World. Both books, just a very creative murder mystery. This one has a little bit more of a gothic feel, where the other one did have a bit more of a sci-fi feel, which is why I probably gravitated toward enjoying that a little bit more. But I would recommend this just because it's different. If you like murder mysteries, it is a different type of murder mystery. Next thing I read, I'm trying to remember the order I read them in. So, A Sheep Detective Story, 3 Bags Full. I was at Barnes & Noble and I picked up a book that I had been looking for, and they put the little sticker on there that says, hey, if you buy one book, you get one book at 50% off. This book literally was right next to the book that I picked, and it just seemed interesting. A Sheep Detective Story. It's a flock of sheep, and their shepherd is murdered, and they go out to solve the mystery. Each of the sheep has each character, and there's quite a few different characters in the book of the sheep that are trying to solve this murder. It's what threw me off a little bit. It was an enjoyable read, but it's a little town. It's got its secrets, and didn't see the end coming. I would recommend this. It was just different. It is going to be a movie next year, I believe, with Hugh Jackman and Emma Thompson. So a bunch of CGI sheep. I will say one thing that caught me off guard about this book. A lot of the books that you read, they'll have like the bonus content in the back, and it had a essay by the author, and he talks about how some of the characters are named in here. And one of the characters, and like I said, there's a lot of characters, so I didn't catch it initially. Let's see, one of the characters is called Mopple the Whale, which, again, I thought I was odd, but he's the memory sheep in the book. The main character is Miss Maple. She's the smartest of all the sheep, but each of the sheep brings something to this investigation via either their involvement in it or experiences that they've had with the shepherd, or maybe some of the other characters that are in this town. When I saw that Mopple the Whale itself, he has a interesting relationship with a butcher in town, and it's a Moby Dick type relationship, hence Mopple the Whale. And I didn't catch that, and it made me wonder what else that I may have missed in this book. The reason that I didn't enjoy it to say a full 4 or 5-star level was there were so many characters and bouncing around. However, I do think maybe next year as the movie comes, because I would love to see this as a movie. I think it would be a lot of fun. The Animal Farm movie I enjoyed, where they give animals human qualities, and that's this book. However, what's really interesting is, first and foremost, they're still sheep. They still have to go out and graze. They still have fear of the wolves. They're still lost because they don't have a shepherd. So that, to me, was definitely one of the really interesting things about this book. So I do think I probably will read this next year before the movie comes out, because Hugh Jackman, Emma Thompson, come on, and I think it would make a fun movie to watch. And then hopefully when I read it again, I'll have a little bit more of a critical mind as I read it. Like I said, my initial feeling it turned me off initially, trying to bounce between a lot of characters and keep track of what was going on. But there is a deeper level of writing in this book that I missed. So reread for next year. All I then read Frieda McFadden's new book, The Tenant. This is about a gentleman that loses his job and he wants to keep his brownstone that him and his fiance live in. So they decide to take on a tenant. And of course, when you invite somebody you don't know into your house, there's always room for all kinds of crazy stuff. I did a live discussion of this book with Michelle at Literary Me, and it was hosted by Isabel at Isabel Reads. So if you want to watch our discussion, which was a lot of fun, head over to the Isabel Reads channel and check it out. We have decided that we will do Frieda McFadden's next book, which comes out in August. We'll do a live stream of that, buddy read, and then we're doing another buddy read of All Fours by Miranda July in July. They're great people to discuss books with. It's a lot of fun. One of the things when I came to BookTube to do book discussions, I didn't necessarily want to have discussions where you're so focused on symbolism and what did this mean and why did the author do this way. I like lighthearted discussion, have some fun, and definitely found that with them. And so I would highly recommend that you go check this out. I didn't think it was one of her better books. I thought it was a middle of the road book compared with some of the other ones I've read by Frieda McFadden. And if you've been to my channel a few times, you know I'm a huge Frieda McFadden fan. She is phenomenal with the psychological twists when she nails them. This one she didn't nail it, but if you go over and watch the discussion, you get a little bit more in-depth reason why I felt that way. Next book I read was The Serial Killer Support Group by Saratoga Schaefer. It was her debut novel. I'm going to do an actual book review video of this because I enjoyed it, and it's such an interesting, unique story to tell about serial killers, which we are so enamored with serial killers, and there's so much out there with TVs and documentaries and movies and books that sometimes you don't get a lot of originality when you're telling the story that has serial killers in it. And Saratoga Schaefer did some wonderful things in this book. So hopefully by the time a week or so after this, because I'm recording it the day as I'm recording all these other videos to get ahead before I go on my road trip, I will have a review of this. If you like serial killer books, I highly recommend this. The main character is trying to find out who killed her sister. And in the very first chapter, she gets a lead from a cop or a detective that they're possibly investigating it in relation to being a victim of a serial killer. And so she finds out about a group of serial killers that meets, a serial killer support group, infiltrates it, and then that's where the story heads off or takes off as she is trying to find out who murdered her sister, and a lot of the cat and mouse. So Serial Killer Support Group by Saratoga Schaefer, highly recommended. And check back to the channel because I will have a video reviewing this book specifically. Next I read Your Utopia, which is a book of short stories by Bora Chung. She's a South Korean author. I had gone into Barnes & Noble to look for her newest book. I've never read her book. I was reading an article of new sci-fi releases for May, and I wanted to read the book, and as I'm sitting here talking, I can't remember what it was called, so I'm going to pull it up here real quick. I have it in my cart on Amazon. Bora Chung wrote, it's called Red Sword, and it does take place, I don't remember timeline in Korea, but she is a slave to this group of people and then is forced to fight in a war for them. So it sounded interesting to me, and I went in to go find it. It hadn't been released yet, I found out, but they had this book of her short stories, so I thought it'd be a good introduction to her writing style. And I thoroughly enjoyed these stories. A lot of AI, a little bit of sci-fi. The story that has stuck with me the most in this is about an elevator. The elevator is the main character, and it lives in this building that is a smart building. And a new tenant comes in, goes into the room, and the elevator is trying to find, what kind of music do they listen to, where kind of places do they go. So as they're interacting with the elevator can play the music for them or take them to whatever floor they need to go to, and the elevator can't find this information. And the elevator slowly pieces things together, and it's interesting because the elevator has quite a few discussions with, I guess, an Alexa type entity, computer, as it learns more, because what you find out is the main character, who's in her, I want to say 90s in this book, is been going to an Alzheimer's center. So when the elevator figures this out, it tries to do things to not necessarily comfort her, but engage her about Alzheimer's, which upsets her. So the elevator is trying to understand human behavior. And the way the story ends just stuck with me so well. The lady does eventually pass away, or she passes away, and they take the elevator down. She's on the gurney, she's covered up, load her up, take her off, and the elevator just stays open. It's like it's lost something. It's very interesting in the discussions that it has, and that's kind of the themes that the book revolves around. There's another story about a disease that takes place on Earth that basically turns people into cannibals, not necessarily zombies, but all of a sudden they just feel like they have to eat people. So they launch a group of people that are not infected in space to monitor, research. Of course, at some point in time, it makes it onto there, and it's an interesting story. I very, very much enjoyed her stories. I would recommend this if you like sci-fi, if you like to read authors that are foreign. I like reading foreign authors, because when you read authors, like American authors, we all, in essence, draw, say, the same experiences, the same, say, pop culture, things that we experience. But people in, different cultures, Japan, South Korea, Russia, their experiences are different. Their history is different. And it bleeds into the writing. And I always find that very entertaining, and I find it very interesting, because a good author, a good foreign author that can take these different experiences, that are different from ours, but still find that common thread of humanity or whatever theme that they are discussing, is just it's phenomenal. And it's such a great experience, because not only are you using the mindset of your, what your history is, what your experience is, now you have to incorporate the experience of somebody from a different culture. And I've traveled, I've been to Korea myself, and when you get two cultures, and then you have a writer that is finding these similarities, with our humanity or various things, or whatever theme it is that they're exploring, and it resonates with you and you understand it, even though you don't have the in-depth understanding of their history and their experiences. It's a great author. It's a really great author. And I did feel that in these stories that I read. And I am looking forward to picking up Red Sword. I do hope I can find it soon. It still hasn't popped up to be available for me. So the last book of May that I read was actually a book my wife picked out on our Barnes & Noble trip. It's called Local Woman Missing by Mary Kubica. And it tells the story of there's a woman that goes missing when she goes out and goes running. And then shortly thereafter, a mother and her daughter go missing. So the story bounces from present day in the book to 11 years prior, when these disappearances happened. And there's three characters that are relaying the story of what happened. It starts off pretty serious, because you have the woman who's abducted, and then you have a 11-year-old child that escapes from being held in a basement in the dark, fed slop, and is returned to her father and her brother. And her brother is the one that narrates the story in the present time in the book. Now, if anybody else has read Mary Kubica, or however you pronounce her last name, can you give me some feedback in the comments? I always tell people that sometimes, like, say with Frieda McFadden, there's certain books that aren't a good entryway into what that author is capable as an author. That makes them so intriguing. And, they say the author of The Other Misses, so I'm assuming maybe that's one of her better books. I was really into this book, and then as the story unfolded and you're starting to see who's responsible for the abductions and how it's affecting various people, I had to suspend a lot of disbelief. It just, the way she connected things didn't make a lot of sense to me, even though the narrative was so tight. I mean, I don't think there's any holes in the story that I could poke logic in. It's just how you go from say, viewing one character to toward the end, now you have a different view of them, and where in the middle did the author give me clues that might be becoming or be part of it. It's something I like. I don't necessarily like being surprised by something a character does out of the blue. So if you've read Mary Kubica, it was an okay book. I didn't enjoy it. It had a lot going on. Even when I discussed it with my wife and I was telling her about some of the scenes that stuck with me, she was kind of like, wow, there was a lot going on in that book that I didn't register. So if you've read other books by her, I mean, is there another book by her that I should give a try? Like I said, the narrative is tight. Her writing is good. The plot kind of left a little bit once it was resolved that I just did not, just made it kind of a meh read for me. So if there's another book by her that maybe I should check out that you think, if you think this wasn't a good entry into what she's capable of as an author, please drop that down in the comments and I'll look into it and see if it's something I might pick up, because it was a quick, easy read. So that is all I have for this video of my May wrap up. There will be a link in the bottom for my, I guess you could say, part 2, where all my where all my wrap ups are kind of related to books about mental health or institution, which I started because of Mental Health Awareness Month with just a book or two, and then it rabbit hole and spiraled into a lot of different reads, and I felt that it deserved its own video to discuss. So if you read any of these books, let me know what you thought. If you're a booktuber and you've done videos on any of these books, drop me a link. I would love to go check out the video to see your more in-depth thoughts on it. Until the next time, thank you for coming to the reading room, and I hope that your next reading experience is a wonderful reading experience.